Hey, everybody. I hope that you can hear me okay. It says that I am live. Last week when I went live, it took about 2 minutes for it to actually show up that I was live. So I was just kind of staring blankly into the camera. But no, I appreciate you showing up here tonight. I've got a really special guest that I'm going to introduce in just a minute. But first, just a couple of housekeeping things. For everybody that kind of watches my channel, I'm almost really probably too persistent with how many videos I upload, but I wanted to make just a quick announcement that I'm going to go through, I'm kind of trying something out to where I'm really going to there's going to be an uptick in my content. Now, to keep it fresh, I'm going to have a bunch of different types of things I'm going to be talking about. So it won't be, 5 videos a day on the same exact thing. It's going to be a variety of different stuff. But just hang in there with me, because you're going to notice that you're going to see a lot of videos popping up from my channel, and it might be a little bit much, but just hang in there with me. I'm going to try it out for probably starting on Wednesday or Thursday this week, going through the following week. But stay tuned. I'll talk more about that a little bit later. Tonight, I am very, very fortunate to have on one of my good buddies, good hobby friends. His name is Jeremy, and he runs the Sportcards Live YouTube channel, which in my mind is the best hobby interview channel that we have on the internet, hands down. And Jeremy does a really good job of just running through the interviews. He takes a lot of time and puts a lot of effort into it. But then also he has amazing guests on. And it's one of those things where if you go through his archive, he's got 55, 60, maybe more than that now, episodes. And I'll let him kind of go into more on his channel, but he's got, some amazing guests on there that can provide a lot of value if you can go back and take a look at his archive on his channel. So thank you very much for joining. I'm going to go ahead and bring Jeremy in now. 1 second. All right. Hey, Jeremy, how's it going, man?
Doing well, Dustin. Thanks for having me. How are you doing?
Absolutely. Yeah. Starting the week on fire. I just drove 10 hours yesterday. So I got home, I just crashed, got a good night's sleep, and I'm ready to roll. So, but yeah, no, I appreciate you coming. I've been looking forward to this one. I don't do a lot of lives, and I want to definitely do more of them. I watch your channel to kind of, learn tips and tricks and different things I can do. I'm not quite up to that standard yet, but I'm working towards it.
I appreciate that. That's high praise. So thanks, man. I'm glad that hopefully you pick up the odd tip or two. I'm happy to share some best practices.
Absolutely. All right. Well, I'm going to go ahead and jump right into the meat of it. So we'll start off. First off, Jeremy's been in the hobby for a long time. So let's start there. What is it that got you into the hobby? What got you into sports cards? Were you a sports fan before you got into cards? Was it the other way around? Kind of walk us through that journey.
Sure. Yeah. So I'm from Canada, and so I'm a hockey fan, and I'm born in the early 70s. So during the 70s, I used to go to hockey games with my dad, and when I was a youngster, and then I remember it was like in the late 70s. I was at I had some cousins that are a little bit older than me, some boys, and I remember in my older cousin's bedroom, he had hockey cards just strewn all over the floor, 1978, 79 O-Pee-Chee hockey cards. And I remember seeing these things, and it's a vivid memory, Dustin. I remember picking them up, looking at them, turning them over, and being like, oh, numbers and reading was kind of still new. I guess I was 7 years old or so, and seeing all these pictures of players and the stats on the back, and I was interested in reading them, and I'm like, oh, these are players that I had maybe seen on the ice, when I'd gone to games with my father. So that was the first memory I really have of cards, and I collected them hard. Once I started getting allowance, I'd get $2 a week or whatever, and I could go to the corner store and buy packs of hockey cards for whatever it was, 20, 25 cents a pack back then. And I did it all the way through the 80s, collected sets all the way through, put together complete sets and of the hockey cards. And I remember when the first Beckett came out, and all of a sudden there were values associated with these cards. They were more than just collectibles. Now they have value. So I remember that moment actually. And so that's kind of what got me into it. And I'm really a collector. Like I love the cards. I was never one of these kids that would play the games where you throw your card against the wall and whoever lands closest wins the cards, or never put them in the spokes of my bike. They were too valuable to me. Yeah. They were too valuable to me just as mementos. So I never did that. And it paid off in the long run, because I had those cards into the 90s when cards kind of started to boom. So
Yeah, you made me think of something too, because nowadays I'm assuming, if you're a young person, you just kind of, if you want to know stats on a player, batting average or something, you can Google that very easily, or you can ask, Siri or whoever it is to tell you. But back then, I remember that being really cool to just study stats on a player on the back of a card. It's odd because that was almost like reading a book or an almanac or something. You had their stats right there. And that was something me and my friends would talk about too. Oh, did you know so-and-so's batting average 3 years ago was this or whatever? And that's something that we take for granted, huge today, because that type of information you can have in seconds. Whereas back then you didn't have that information unless you had a book or unless you had, written it down or whatever. I mean, the information was not as available back then. So that's interesting that you bring that up, because that is really true.
It's also this is before we had ESPN. It's before we had, up in Canada, we have TSN up here. It's before you had these sports networks where you could go on and hear what happened during the day. Back then, you had to wait for the newspaper to get to your front door the next morning to know what happened in the games all around the North America, if you want to, unless you were listening to shortwave radio sort of thing. That's how long. That's the way it was back then. So yeah, no, it's a cool observation you make there.
And now you haven't stopped. I mean, you've been collecting ever since. It wasn't like how I kind of went off and then I came back into the hobby. You've really kind of been in it for the last 30 plus years, right?
Yeah. Yes, correct. Like I started really, I said the first memory of cards is like 1979, but I started buying packs in like 81, 82, I think it would have been, maybe even 83, collected all the sets. I probably went back and built some older ones. And then in 1990, I graduated high school in 1990, and I took off to Australia for a year on the Students Working Abroad program. And a funny story, I remember being there and I was like homesick, and I was homesick for cards in the hobby. And I managed to find I don't know if it was a bookstore or a collectible store in Sydney, Australia, that was selling Skybox basketball, the very first year of Skybox basketball. And I would buy some packs of that there. When I got home from Australia in the spring of 91, I started working part-time in a card shop. And about 6 months later, I opened up my own card shop. So I quit on that guy and opened up my own shop. And I had the shop for 3 or 4 years. And then when the kind of hobby sort of went bust in around 94, I guess it was, we closed up shop, we being me and my parents and my brother. And then I did I didn't leave the hobby, but I definitely took a step back. I mean, I wasn't collecting sets every year. It got more confusing back then with the different manufacturers and the different brands that came out. And so I didn't disappear from the hobby. I was still into my vintagey stuff, but I stopped with the modern stuff until the year 2000, 99 or 2000 started. I had graduated university. I started working and, had a bit more discretionary income. And I started to collect the more of the current stuff, and sort of picked up on a project that I had been doing through the late 80s. I wanted to collect the rookie card of all the 1,000-point men in NHL history. Mm-hmm. And so I picked up on that, and then I started collecting like Hall of Fame rookies of all sports. And I mean, through the whole 2000s and into the 2010s, so the last 20 years, basically, I've been going like really hard into the hobby from a collecting perspective, a community perspective, an online perspective, all those sorts of perspectives.
Okay, got it.
Yeah.
I was just thinking this too. When I was a kid, I remember, and I don't know if this was a new thing, and this is like 87, 88, 89, but I remember, that's when I started getting top loaders and penny sleeves and stuff like that. When did the hobby recognize, like, okay, people are buying and they want to protect these things? Was that in the late 80s or was that in 1980?
I don't, that's a great question. I don't remember exactly, but I do remember buying cards in the mid 80s. I used to take the bus downtown with a friend of mine. I'm talking like, I was 13, 14 years old, and buying, like I bought a Mario Lemieux rookie card for 25 cents. Back in 1986, probably. And I remember thinking to myself, I need something to put this in, because I was someone who took care of my cards. I guess I realized early on that these things needed to be in good condition. And I remember thinking, we need these sleeves. And it's very vague, Dustin, but I sort of do remember the first time I saw sleeves. And I guess it must have been in the mid to late 80s, like maybe 87, 88, in and around there. Up until then, it was nine pocket sheets and binders is what it was. Those are always around. But yeah, top loaders.
You think about that's such a huge part of the hobby now, but if you think back then, though, someone took a big risk on manufacturing those. Like somebody was like, "Hey, let's give this a shot. Maybe they'll buy it. Maybe they won't." And now it's you couldn't live without it.
It's crazy how reliant we are on all the plastic in this hobby.
Yeah. All right, so let's seg into your channel. So you've been in the hobby a long time. What kind of prompted you to decide to go into starting a YouTube channel? Had you done something like YouTube before? Had you done a podcast? Had you done any sort of TV before? Or were you just like, I'm going to give this a shot? How did you decide that you were going to do the YouTube channel?
Well, I mean, did I do any TV aside from playing the Fawns in Happy Days? I haven't done any TV in the past. I kid, of course. So what happened was I had no experience. I'd never done a podcast. I used to search out podcasts and, hobby podcasts, and there were only a couple. And I don't remember really finding any that I loved because I guess they were mostly focused on baseball back then. So what happened was it was around early 2019, maybe even late 2018, when I started to discover some more content, whether it was podcast or YouTube. I found a few of the popular ones. The first podcast that I really got into was House of Jordans with Chris McGill and his girlfriend Christina and cousin Brian. I started listening to that one, just going on my nightly walk. I really enjoyed it. And then I found a few others on YouTube. I found PSA Collector. I found Sports Card Investor. Started watching some of that. I thought it was great. It was something, and Cardboard Chronicles, which was one of my favorites. So I found these channels and I started watching some of the content, but it wasn't enough, obviously. And now we know how much there is. So I ended up, what happened was it was I guess March of this year, and there had been some virtual card shows that were being held on Instagram. Justin, who goes by at 610 Sports Cards on Instagram, organized a virtual card show, and I took part in it. Okay. And I got some good feedback on it. And then I thought, hey, I want to go live and sell more cards, and I wanted to do it with some vintage graded hockey cards that I had. And I thought, well, I'll go into a vintage hockey group and I'll sell them there. So I went into the group and I messaged the mods. I said, hey, I'd like to go live and sell some cards. They said, okay, that's fine, but you got to follow our rules, which were no modern cards and everything has to be priced. I said, okay, fair enough, no problem. So I went on one night, just streaming straight in using Facebook, streaming right into this particular Facebook group. And I just sat there kind of showing cards and, hey, I got this one. I'm asking, $100. I got this one. I'm asking $200. And I sold a bunch of cards and I had a really good time at it. And then I got some private messages afterwards from some of the viewers saying, hey, that was really entertaining and fun. You should do it again. I thought, well, I'd like to do it again, but I want to sell some modern cards. And I'm like, okay, where am I going to do this? I can't do it in that group. I got to find a modern hockey group to do it in. And there's so many modern hockey groups that I couldn't decide which one to do it in. So I thought, then the light bulb went off. I thought, whoa, maybe I'll create a new Facebook group, like the world needs another hobby Facebook group. But I thought maybe I'll create another Facebook group and it'll just be for live streaming. And I thought, oh, I'll call it Sports Cards Live. It just kind of makes sense. So I went into YouTube and I created the group and the name was available. So that was win number one, I guess, and created the group. But I left it dormant, it wasn't public yet. And then I went into YouTube. I thought, well, I may as well see if I can get that name in YouTube. The name was available, which I thought was pretty lucky. So I locked up the name on YouTube. And then I started researching, how am I going to do this? And that's when I found StreamYard, which is, as you can see in the top corner right there, right? On your stream. I found this platform and then I started researching how to use it. I just YouTube searched how to use StreamYard, that kind of thing. And I watched their videos and then it's like, okay, now what? well, you need a logo. So I went on to Fiverr.com and I paid somebody in Pakistan $25 for the logo.
Yep.
And I thought, okay, I'm ready. I'm ready to go live. But what am I going to do? What am I going to do? What am I going to do on the channel? So I talked to a buddy of mine is Carvin Chung, who invented the cup and Exquisite, who worked at Upper Deck and Panini, now at GTS. And I said to him, I called him. I'm like, hey man, I got a YouTube channel I created, and I'm gonna do a show on Saturday. Do you want to be my first guest? He's like, yeah, no problem. Okay, great. So that was on that was maybe on the Tuesday leading up to that Saturday. And then I started getting nervous. I'm getting nervous. I'm about to go live for the first time with kind of not just to sell cards in a very small Facebook group. And I thought to myself, okay, I'm going to go live with Carvin on Saturday, but maybe I should do a practice run. So I set up an episode for the Thursday leading up to it. And I just came on myself and just kind of talked about what I had planned to do on the channel, kind of the direction I wanted to take it. And as I just said the other day to somebody else, it's like, I don't remember what I said in that first episode. I don't know if anything came true, if the show went to where I thought it would go to, but that's kind of how it launched. I had Carvin on for the first episode. I wanted to come out with a bang, and Carvin was a well-respected and somewhat infamous guy in the hobby. He's a bit of a hobby legend. He invented Exquisite. There was no super high-end product before that, and he invented it. And then he invented this, the same sort of product in hockey, but they called it the cup. And that's how I got to know him, was through the hockey side of things. And anyway, he came on, had great viewership. And then I just started calling people I knew and said, hey, do you want to come on my next show? And it just kind of organically turned into what's now known as an interview show. And that wasn't the goal.
Now, how many of your guests are, longtime hobby friends or like a good friend of a hobby friend? And then how many have kind of just happened, just happened because you have a channel and then you've run across them in other ways, or you just reached out to them kind of blind, like, hey, you want to come on the show, and it worked out? Because you have really, like the who's who outside of me. I'm like the out of all of your episodes, I'm like the nobody that's on the guest list there. But like outside of that, like literally you have like like Dr. Beckett, you have the product manager of Panini, you've got like literally every, you've hit kind of the whole spectrum. It's impressive. And that's why I like watching, because every single guest you learn something from, or it's someone that's, an industry person that has inside information that's helpful, or, how did all that come about? How does it typically come about?
Well, so I guess I had a bit of an advantage because, and this is something, we don't talk about it so much anymore because they're kind of outdated, but hobby message boards, Blowout's a pretty famous one. Sports Card Forum. There used to be one called Freedom Cardboard, and there's one called Hobby Insider. And there was the Beckett message boards were kind of the first one. And I was very active on the Beckett boards in like 2000, 2001, 2002. And what I think it was in around 2003 or 4, the Beckett boards got shut down. I guess Beckett decided they didn't want it as part of their website anymore. They shut it down. And a bunch of people went off in their own direction. I think at that time, like baseball and football guys went to Sports Card Forum, basketball guys went to Freedom Cardboard, and the hockey guys went to Hobby Insider, including myself. And that would have been like 04, 05 probably. And I became a pretty active member on that website. And I got to know the guys at Upper Deck through that site, because I showed off. I pulled off a few kind of cool things where I managed to acquire all 6 one-of-ones that came out for 1 year in a particular brand of hockey. It was SP Game Used 8 patches. I found all 6 of them. There are only 6. I got all 6, went to the expo in Toronto, showed them to Upper Deck. Upper Deck took me over to Beckett, said, hey, you got to do an article on this. This guy did this, was very, was awesome. So whatever issue of Beckett Hockey from 2000 and something, I was in there with my collection. And, but then in 2012, the owner of the website, well, hold on, I'll step back. And then what happened was the cup came out, Upper Deck, the cup came out for hockey in 05, 06. And I very early on started saving scans of all the RPAs out of 99 that came out. And I built an archive, and I did that for the first 3 years, where I was basically scouring, eBay and other places to get these images. And I built up this pretty large archive that became quite a reference for a lot of people. And so I got a bit of notoriety for that. And I even started up a website. I just had to fold. I didn't have the time, but I started up a site called Fake Patch Report. I don't know, maybe you Google it, you'll still see something. Beckett Football did an article about that way back. And but it got overwhelming. I was getting so many submissions, I couldn't keep up. I was a one-man show, so I had to fold that project. But then in 2012, the guy that owned Hobby Insider was a friend of mine just through being at the site and going to card shows. And he called me up one day. I remember I was sitting in my office and he's like, "Hey, I want to sell the site. I'm opening up a pub. I need some cash." I'm like, "Okay." He goes, "I want you to buy it." I said, "Oh, okay. I'd like to buy it." Why not, right? So he gave me a price. We negotiated. I sent him a bank draft, and I still to this day own Hobby Insider, which is, again, it's just a message board. It's a non-profit sort of thing. It runs on donations that help pay the freight every month, and I still kind of run it, but it doesn't take a lot of work. It somewhat runs itself. We have some moderators, etc. But by virtue of owning Hobby Insider, a lot of the card company guys are members on there, like especially Panini, Upper Deck, In the Game, Dr. Brian Price, who owns In the Game and has done Sports Kings and now owns President's Choice Trading Cards. He's very active on there. And like a bunch of the guys at Upper Deck, a few of the guys from Panini. Since Panini lost their hockey license, they're not on there as much anymore, but some of the guys still check it out. So that's when I said I kind of had an advantage. That was my advantage, is that I already knew these guys by virtue of owning this message board and being present at all the big card shows as well. I go to them all. Well, I go to the National. I've been going to the National since the mid to late 2000s. I go to the Toronto Expo twice a year. And so that's how. So it was actually pretty easy for me to get these guests. Brian Price is on, who owns a card company, and he used to he worked at Upper Deck. He worked for ProSet. He's done a lot of things. I just had to send him a private message in my own platform to get in touch with him. Like I said, I know the team at Upper Deck. The guy from Chris Barr, the product manager from Panini. Someone that I just knew from Hobby Insider, saw him at the National in 2019, and it was like a reunion. Like he's like, "Hey, Jeremy," I'm like, "Oh, Chris, like you've got Panini's been out of hockey for so long." It was like so good to see him, and hey, you want to come on the show? Yeah, no problem. And it just Tim Getch, who owns COMC, I've known him since 2013. I'm an early adopter of COMC, and so he was just a phone call away. He actually sponsored Hobby Insider in the early days when I took it over. So we already had like a bit of a business relationship. So it was really easy to get him. I've had Steve Grad on. Sorry, if you're about to jump in.
Yeah, I was going to ask you a question. I just popped into my mind about COMC. You mentioned, going back to 2013. When did COMC kind of explode to what it is today? Or has it always been very busy volume wise like that, and just more and more people know about it now?
It's been growing steadily since they launched. I remember seeing them at the National set up with a booth in probably 2008 or 9. Would have been 8. I think it was the Chicago in 2008. I remember seeing them, and they were nobodies at that time. They were not well known. I don't mean nobodies, but they were not well known in the hobby.
Sure.
And I thought to myself, there's no way I'm giving you my cards. I don't know you,
Yeah.
And then a couple years went by, and they actually came up to a show in Canada here in Edmonton called the Summit. And I went, and the promoter is a good buddy of mine. So he kind of brought them up, and we all went out for dinner like the night before the show started. And I met Tim and his wife at the time, and got to know them that way at over dinner. And then I thought, I'm going to give this a try because I like the guy who owns it. I trust the guy who owns it. So yeah. I'm willing to give him my cards to list on his site. So I did that in 2013, and since then I've just seen them steadily grow, and it's been a really cool trajectory because they've become a very well known. I know there's backlogs with all the companies in the hobby right now, but I just know that he's a collector. He's one of these genius guys who codes the site by himself, and he was just looking to create. Yeah, he was just looking to create a solution for the hobby, and he did. And to me, it's a great service, and so I think they've done really well in terms of scaling and adding features and just building up their business and trying new things. And he's an entrepreneur. I really respect him and the team there too.
Let's say hey to some of our guests here in the chat. Sorry guys, I've been neglecting you for the first 25 minutes. Let me see if I can get back up to it here. So, all right, we've got Craig C. How's it going, man? For those people who can't afford hobby boxes, what do you best feel would be the best way to buy singles or sets? Oh my gosh, that's such a tough question to answer. And it really depends on a million different factors, Craig. I'm sorry, man. I'm not even going to try. I'm going to keep on moving. But we will get into some other, we're going to answer something kind of similar to that in just a few minutes. Ziggy, how's it going, man?
Yo, Ziggy.
Yep, Ziggy's in the house. Michael S. And Yamwax was here earlier. I don't know if he's still here, but Yam, good to see you, buddy. And then also $1 Million Collection. How's it going? And I think also, let's see, Flipping Steve is also lurking in here. Steve, what are you doing in here? Don't use Mariah Carey music in your videos. Copy that, brother. Yeah, I'm so nervous to use anything that could be copyrighted at all. I don't use anything like that. All right.
I'm glad we're not listening to Mariah Carey in the background right now. So thanks, Flipping Steve. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Steve. Appreciate it. All right. So, let's go ahead. Let's talk about, there was one thing, because Jeremy's been in the hobby for a good amount of time. And I know that on YouTube, we talk a lot about flips and, different angles to take. I think that's always fun. To talk about, short-term flips and short-term buys. But I wanted to dig in a little bit more into long-term buys, long-term holds. And I really wanted to get Jeremy's opinion on it, because he's been in the hobby. He does have kind of, he's got long-term holds that he has. And so I wanted to get kind of some ideas from him, just what his take is on, vintage versus modern versus sealed wax and kind of all these things. Jeremy, what would be, I guess you can answer it a couple different ways. What would you do? Or, what would you advise to a new person? What would you advise to a longtime collector, hobbyist for a long-term investment? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, it's such a cool question right now, Dustin, because a lot of what I'm seeing in YouTube content is more of the short-term investments, and it's based on a lot of who's hot right now. Who's going to have a great season, who's going to have a good playoffs, who's poised to break out this coming season, that sort of thing. And while I love that, I love watching that game, and I think it's exciting. And I had Jeff Wilson from Sports Card Investor on my show just last week, and he made the comment that, what's hot now, it's kind of sexier than the guys that have been retired for a long time. So I understand that. Although I think there's some, the word sexy is kind of funny when it comes to cards, but I think there's some sexiness to some of the older vintage cards too. So, for me personally, I do invest in cards. I collect. I invest in cards that I want to collect. Very rarely will I buy a card to invest in that I don't want to collect as well. That has no emotional value for me. I recently did step outside that comfort zone and picked up some not first edition, but some first set Charizards. Just because I didn't want to miss out on it. Case of the FOMO. And but anyway. So for me, it's like, you can invest in players that are playing today, but there's a ton of risk involved if you're investing in any modern day player, whether it's Zion or Steph Curry or Kevin Durant. Or now I go as far as say there's zero risk in investing in LeBron James, because he's a guaranteed Hall of Famer. He's a guaranteed top 5 player of all time. So guys like that, you're okay with. So my biggest advice, if you're investing in cards, is invest in somebody who can't get injured for the season, somebody who's a guaranteed or already in the Hall of Fame, or somebody who's active and that is, like I just said, is going to be in the Hall of Fame. And they're not that hard to pick out. But once you start investing in the rookies of the current year and this next up, I know a lot of people are excited for the basketball products that are about to come out. And that's great. That's really cool. But I can guarantee you a Luka or a Zion doesn't appear every year. And there's a lot of rookie classes or rookie years from in cards in all the sports that have nobody really worthwhile in them, or a maximum of like, 3 or 4 rookies that are worth anything many years later. So while the first round has 30 picks or so, you might see 4, 5, if you're lucky, of these guys actually have long careers that are worthy of investment, in my opinion. Now, that doesn't mean you can't just get in and out quickly during a season, but I just don't, personally, I don't have the attention span. I'm a little too lazy to list something right when if a guy has a great game, I'm not going to go list his card the next day. It's just not something that I have the time for, that I do. So
yeah,
my biggest advice is, if you're looking to invest and you are patient, invest in guys who are Hall of Famers. Invest in, and if they're modern, I know a lot of people watching probably want to invest in the modern players, the current players. If that's the case, you have to really narrow your focus, I think, and pick a player that you truly believe is going to be a Hall of Famer. Because if you're going to hold this card 10, 20, 30 years, if they're not Hall of Famers, there's not going to be a market for them. And even if they are Hall of Famers, there's not a market for all Hall of Famers, there's a very small market for the lower end Hall of Famers. So
it's kind of interesting. It's like the Warren Buffett, like, only diversify if you don't know what you're doing type thing, which obviously, of course, we know that with athletes, you can know what you're doing and really know a player is going to be good, and they just might have a career ending injury or something, something could just happen. So there's always that added risk. But yeah, it kind of does speak to that, does it make sense to buy Silver Prism of the whole rookie class, diversify yourself, in the long run? How does that play out over time when 9 out of 10 of those guys is probably going to have an average career at best? They're not going to be a Michael Jordan or a Hall of Fame player.
Yeah, no, that's exactly right. And the other thing, you could, investing in the GOATs, if you just like, it's tough, because I want to say, if you just want to invest, I don't know that I'm the best guy to talk to you, because I'm such a collector as well, that to me, I wouldn't, if I wasn't collecting, I wouldn't be investing. I only invest because I collect, and I'm an investor by consequence, because a lot of the cards I have become so valuable over the years, and I've paid lots for cards too. Here's another piece of advice I like to give. Don't, especially when it comes to rare cards, this doesn't apply to commodity cards. So this does not apply to Silver Prisms or Topps Chromes or regular Topps or, Ken Griffey Jr. Upper Decks. It doesn't apply to those commodity type cards. This applies to rare cards. And that is, don't be afraid to break a record when you're buying something. If there's a card you want and it's rare and it's only ever sold for $5,000, but you can get it for, you can't get it unless you're willing to pay $600 or $6,500, pay it. Especially if you're talking about a Mickey Mantle or a Michael Jordan or a Wayne Gretzky or a Walter Payton, like any of the GOATs or the best of all, these guys, if it's a rare card. And by rare, I'm also not talking about like a PSA 9, or I'm not even talking about a PSA 10. I'm talking about more inserty stuff, 90 stuff that's super hot and very important. Even current rare parallels and inserts. Again, not the Prism Silvers, but the Prism Golds. There's a lot of excitement over Prism Golds out of 10 right now. To me, that's where the excitement should be. Those are worthy holdings as an investor. So my advice is, don't be afraid to break a record, because if nobody's breaking records on what people are paying for cards don't go up in value. So the guy that bought, when the LeBron James RPA sold for 1.8 million, record. And I believe when they sell that, it'll be a new record for that card. The Mike Trout, the Honus Wagners, we're always hearing about these record-breaking prices. Someone's paying them. If we're not paying more for cards, they don't go up in price or in value. So I've done it a couple times. I've broken records buying cards, and the only reason I did it, and here's why I did it, Dustin. This is kind of funny. So it was 2007. I very impulsively bought a Mickey Mantle rookie card, the 51 Bowman, the true rookie.
Okay.
Very impulsively. I was on eBay one night, and I guess somehow it came up in like the bottom of the screen, like related cards. I clicked on it. It was ending in like 2 minutes. I had no time to research the pop or the value.
Wow.
And it's a PSA 6. I just went and I bid, and I won that card I think at the time it was selling for around $5,000. I won it for like $6,600, which is maybe why I used those numbers earlier tonight, because those are numbers that are familiar to me. So I broke the record. And after I bought the card, I looked over at my room and I go, Sean, I just bought a Mickey Mantle rookie. He's like, well, I go, yeah. I go, I don't know what I just did, right? But now I owe this guy $6,500 or whatever. So I did the research after. I'm like, oh, great. It's a $5,000 card. Why did I pay 65? I should have waited. Well, and I was a little upset. Anyway, I got the card, I put it away, and I just kind of sat on it. I wasn't following the value. A couple years later, I was like, oh, I'm going to go see what they're selling for now, because I didn't care. I just wanted a Mantle rookie for my collection of Hall of Fame rookies. So I go look at it, I'm like, holy crap, it's worth $15,000. I'm like, yeah, or 12, whatever it was. I'm in the money. I'm in the money. Yeah. And that was my first realization that, just because you overpay for something, at point zero plus 1 year, 2 year, 5, 10 years in this hobby and industry, you're probably going to come out ahead. And I did it again earlier in 2020. I bought a Michael Jordan BGS 95 Jambalaya, the 97, like an iconic, very important card. Yeah. When I bought it, I believe I paid more than anyone else had paid for one at the time, or the, recorded and public domain type of comps. And I was like, oh man, like that was big. So, but I sold a bunch of cards to cover for it and that. And it hasn't been. It's I don't want to sound like a genius or like I'm all that smart because hey, it's worth double what I paid for it 10 months later. We all have cards that are worth double what we paid for them. So it's like you had to be real bad not to experience some gains in 2020. So I don't take any credit for that. But what it by overpaying on that Mantle. And realizing within a few years that I did well, it gave me the courage or the kahunas to go overpay for not overpay, but pay more than before on this particular Jordan card. And now it's a winner. It's worth twice what I paid, and it's a big card. So yeah, my advice is don't be afraid to pay for a card. And the other thing is, it's like I used to have it. I don't have a PSA 10 Barry Sanders score rookie or a PSA 10 Emmitt Smith supplemental rookie card. But, up until 10 months ago, you could buy these cards, 200 on the Sanders, 400 on the Emmitt Smith, 400 for 400 to 500 for a Ken Griffey Jr. Upper Deck PSA 10. Now those cards are all 3 to 4 times those values. So my other piece of advice is don't wait. Don't try and time this. Buy what you want when you want it, find the best copy you can at the best price, get into the card because look, and don't think that we're in this crazy market right now that in 5 months you're going to be able to get them for the prices of last year or 10 months ago. I mean, you might. I'm not saying you won't, but don't bank on it. They could be worth more, and then you're going to wish that you bought them sooner. So when you see a card you want, you see a card you like, acquire it. Especially, and sorry, Dustin, I'm going off on a slight tangent here.
Oh, it's a good point, though. I want you to keep going. Yeah.
If you're at a card, this is something that I gotta share with people that maybe haven't been to a lot of card shows in their life or just getting into the game. When you're at a card show and you realize that you walk in there and you want to cover the whole room and you've got a limited budget, whatever that budget is, and you go around to each table and you see, okay, I like this card here. I'm going to mark down booth 68 has this card. I'm going to come back for it later if that's what I want. You travel the room. You got 6 or 7 cards that you want, and now you got to go back and if you were smart enough to write down where they were, you go back and find to look for them. Nowadays, you go back, those cards are going to be gone. I guarantee you, if they're cards you want, and especially if they're of popular players. If you're talking about filling your binder, no problem for old sets. But if you're looking for a good card, a card of a good player, you got to buy it when you're there because you can go back 5 minutes later and it'll be sold. And as a vendor at card shows, I've seen it 100 times where somebody comes to my table. They're like, hey, I want that card, but I just got here. I'm going to go see what else is there. They come back to my booth, whether 30 minutes or 2 hours later. They're like, hey, do you still have that card? I'm like, it's sold, man. They're like, oh, that's the one I want. Well, you should have bought it when you saw it.
No, you make a great point too, especially with the Jambalaya Jordan that you're talking about. If it's a scarce card and your budget, you're like, I want to pay $5, but it's $6. That card might not even be for sale again. There's only a limited number. You might not even see it for sale again until the next national or whenever. So yeah, when you're talking about the really rare stuff, I think you do have to take that into account. if it's a little bit over where you were going to spend, I mean, you might not see that card again. And I don't think that's like a FOMO thing. I think that's just a smart, like, look, there's only so many out there, and maybe this person just needs to get some money out of it. Maybe they want to buy a larger card and they're ready to move on from it. And that's an opportunity. Yeah, for me, assuming Luka kind of continues on his track, if he kind of, keeps on elevating, his Blue Prism rookie numbered out of 199, the 2018, that's my card that I have. And I don't even know if I would need it in like a PSA 10 or a 9, just because it's numbered out of 199, even if it was like a BGS 8 or something. If I saw one of those, and even if it was more expensive than maybe the comps or whatever, just because it's so limited, that's one that's on my radar. Honestly, if there's like a PSA 5 and it's like $1,000, I'll buy that one. I mean, it's just a rare card. You look at like, the Michael Jordan, the PMG cards, they're trimmed and they're still selling for $1 zillion.
Yeah.
I mean, so if it's a rare card, you have to take advantage of the opportunity when it arises. Obviously, if it's quadruple the price, then maybe not. But I mean, if it's within striking range, for sure.
Well, yeah, and this is important, an important thing to consider. The rarer the card, the less important the condition. I mean, it's really as simple as that, because if it's a PMG green out of 10, any sport, any year, it doesn't matter. PMG out of 10. Like, when Nat Turner bought his copy in early 2019 for, what did he pay for that card? $350,000 or something like that. When he bought that card, it was just authentic. It was thought to be trimmed or something. He didn't care. He just wanted a copy of the card because there's only 10 and it's, for his set. And that, I kind of always thought that way. But when he did that and he was on the Cardboard Chronicles episode and I watched that interview early on in my kind of, YouTube content consumption, the light went off for me even more. And I thought, yeah, that's right. If there, I'm not going to wait a card out of 5, a card out of 3, even like a card out of 10, 25. Like, it may be a while till you see another one. And so, there's nothing wrong with a PSA 7 of a rare card if you just want the card. And they can turn into excellent investments as well. So, but I like your call on the Blue Prism for the Luka out of 199, because 199 it's a really good number, right? It's in that sweet spot of, it's not in the it's numbered number 1, so it's not like a silver prism or a base prism. 199 is not a big number for a player like Luka.
No.
But it's also not going to be like the silver, like the gold prism out of 10, or comps, comparable cards like that, or other cards of his like that. So I think that's a great card to strive for. Yeah, actually, you make me want one. I have a Luka, just a base prism that I picked up at the National in 2019 for $40 in a PSA 10. $40 I got it for, but I think it's a year and a half ago. But I'd love, the silver prism interests me a little bit, but that one out of 199 sounds like a great investment. The other thing about, back to investing in modern players, is that, Luka, as good as he is, and I do believe he's kind of next in line, after LeBron, if you go sort of, Jordan, LeBron, Luka, and put Kobe in there somewhere. I do think that Luka can be that next guy. If, Zion might too, but I know people are concerned about his health. But even Luka, you have a bad injury, those cards will just tank in value. His RPA out of 99 that sell for, $200,000, 100, whatever they go for, those are going to be worth very little. Like they'll go from being worth $200,000 to $5,000. If his career ends, no one's going to care anymore. People, some people in Dallas will care because he gave them such a great couple of seasons. So there will be something there, but they're not going to, if you don't win a championship, if you don't get into the Hall of Fame, those cards aren't there. Those cards won't be valuable anymore. So I'm concerned for people that have, whether it's thousands or millions of dollars tied up in some of these modern goats, if you will, like young rookie or first, guys in their first 5 years that people consider to be up and coming goats. That's very risky. So what I would recommend is that you balance it out. And I started doing this a long time ago. I'd say every time I would spend, say, $100 breaking product and getting nothing out of it, I'd force myself to spend $100 on something that I thought was a better investment to at least have that 50-50 split. So I think you should apply the same sort of approach if you're investing in these modern players. It's like, If you're going to go spend thousands of dollars on a really rare Luka or just a high grade, not so rare Luka, take that same amount of money and go buy a nice Jordan, or go buy a Bill Russell or a Wilt Chamberlain or a Dr. J, Magic Bird, any of these guys. Buy something from one of them to balance yourself out. I think that's something that people should be doing as well.
Yeah, I've been doing kind of, and I think this is fairly common, but kind of doing more of the lesser expensive, base rookie cards. Like Luka, Zion, they've got a million different options, for a base rookie card, whether you're buying Prism or Optic or Revolution or whatever it is, and trying to kind of play that volatility game a little bit with their stuff. Not Zion in particular. I've got a couple of his cards, but nothing crazy. But with Luka, that would be, kind of part of my goal is to sell some of the smaller Lukas to buy the big Luka, to buy the blue Prism, or sell something else, maybe, hitting on one of those prospects to then kind of move up to get something else, trying to play that volatility game a little bit to then get up to it. And like you said, hopefully, I think that's kind of interesting. And you've seen it, you've been in it long enough to know that, there have been spikes in the card market, but 2020 was kind of a whole different animal of a spike, with maybe a perfect storm of events. And, does it kind of go back to normal next year where it's a little bit more of a normal card market where you still do see some volatility, but it's not just not what it was in 2020? Or is this something that kind of carries over the next 5 years or something like that? In which case, maybe I get that blue Prism in 5 years, whatever it is, I'm patient. I'm very patient, I'll get it at some point, but yeah, that's kind of the $1 million question is this like the new fine art, as we hear people talking about, where young people, the millennials and that group and Gen Xers like me, I'm kind of on the fringe. I think I'm like a Gen W or something. I don't know. I'm like right in between the Gen X and the Gen Y, but is this going to be kind of the new thing? Is this like what people put money, and you look at kind of the influencers, you look at, I can't remember the guy's name, Logan Paul, that just spent, and Logic just spent a couple $100,000 on a card. Is that going to be the norm? I think that, it's interesting. We'll see.
If you're asking me, I'm not gonna claim to be able to fortune tell and see the future, that'll just get, I'm not gonna do that. I can't do that. But I've been bullish on the hobby for decades. I've always thought these things were good investments because they've proven to be. I've literally been in the hobby for 40 years, and it's been 40 years of an upward trajectory. And like you just said, Dustin, there have been valleys along the way. I've seen them all. I've been through them. And what I can tell you is, if you buy a card in 2020 and you're paying, 5 times what it could have been in 2019, I think that's okay. And I also think that in 2021, if that card, let's just use some numbers. Let's say the card was $1,000 a year ago. Now it's $5,000. You buy it today for $5,000. 2021, the card's now selling for $4,000. A couple months go by, it's selling for $3,000. You start to think, oh crap, I just lost $2,000. Unrealized loss of in this card asset I'm holding. I would caution you to not sell it to cut your losses at $2,000 and sell it for $3,000. I would say keep the card, because over time the market is going to come back. That's one thing I will predict, is that the market will come back because it's cyclical.
Yeah.
Wait it out. Be patient, because it's happened to me. I bought a card in 2016 that I overpaid for. I think I paid $2,900 for this particular card, and I didn't even mean to. This is a quick side story. You know how on eBay, on the iPhone app, you click bid, and then if you're automatically outbid, it gives you those 3 options to bid again. Well, I bid, was automatically outbid, and then I started just hitting that spot without thinking it would be a smaller. Well, the next bid, instead of it being $2,200, was like $2,900, and I hit it without realizing. And then it says it stopped. It started spinning.
You're like,
this auction, $2,900, $700 more than I wanted to spend. Now it's a Stan. This particular card was a Stan Musial. I forget if it's the Leaf or the Bowman, but the black and white rookie card from 1948, I believe. And so So I overpaid. And then 2017 or 18 roll around and the cards come down in value. So not only did I overpay for it, now it's come down in value from what I should have paid. And I'm like, oh, great. You know, I'm in the red on this card. Well, you let a couple more years go by and you're back in the black. And, you know, I'm still the proud owner of that card. I could have sold it, locked in a loss. That would have been the wrong move. So it ties into what I was saying earlier. You know, if you're you have to be willing. I think if you're really investing, you have to play the long game in this hobby, because if you don't play the long game on the vintage guys, and that's where the vintage guys, the retired guys, the Hall of Famers, they will ride the peaks and valleys of the hobby. Whereas current players ride the peaks and valleys of the hobby, as well as their performance, public perception, team performance, championship, yes or no, etc. So you got to be willing to ride out those peaks and valleys over the years. But a lot of the content I'm seeing is so short-term focused, and that's what I kind of think to myself. You know, if a lot of people consuming this content that's like that are going to be, we may lose a lot of those people, because there will be a valley, there will be ups and downs, and if they see the down and they sell, they lock in their loss, they get upset with the hobby, they don't come back. So I caution people for that. And then you mentioned
yeah, I agree. No, I was gonna throw in there too. I was like, you know, for those that are only buying kind of rookies or that next rookie class or whatever, just take a second. And even if vintage to you means 1987, you know, like if that's your vintage, just take a look at that stuff. You know, just dig into it. At least do some research on it. Even if you're not necessarily, maybe you're not going to buy a ton of it, but you know, just take a peek at it. Because for me, I was kind of in that, like, you know, when I first came back in the hobby, I told you I bought a Joe Montana rookie card, and I bought some vintage stuff that I thought was cool. And it was stuff that I couldn't get as a kid. And I'm like, oh yeah, I've got a Joe Montana rookie card, PSA 8, you know, this is exciting. I got a Jim Brown rookie. And then when I started to get into it, and yeah, the modern stuff is very fun. I enjoyed buying the Lucas stuff and the Pat Mahomes stuff. And there's some exciting new players that's fun. But then as I got into it more, then I started going back to my original kind of like, okay, let's go back to some of that, you know, and vintage can be, to me, I think that can also include 80s basketball, whether it's Magic Johnson or Larry Bird. It doesn't necessarily have to be their rookie, you know, but just take a gander at it, take a peek at it, because there's so many different options. There's so much inventory, whether you're looking at hockey or you know, baseball or basketball. You know, one thing I was going to say too, for a hockey guy, you know, you have a prolific vintage collection. That's baseball, that's football, that's, you know, basketball. What are the ones that, you know, kind of what excites you the most? I mean, I know you're a huge hockey collector and a hockey watcher of the sport, but if you're looking at vintage cards, which one excites you the most out of, you know, American football, baseball, and basketball stuff?
Sure. Well, I mean, to me, it's the iconic Hall of Famers. I've been collecting Hall of Fame rookies for decades now, all sports. And so, I mean, you know, I love in baseball, I love the 1948 Leaf set with the Jackie Robinson, the Warren Spahn rookie cards. They're gorgeous. If you've seen the Warren Spahn, I mean, it's orange, his face is there, his big nose, like it's just,
I need to dig into that set. I have not taken a hard look at that.
It's an amazing set.
Baseball in general is something that I've been meaning. It's been on the bucket list, but I'm so consumed with football and basketball. But I was looking at Roberto Clemente rookies, you know, the other day, and I was like, man, I really need to look at baseball, you know, a little harder, the vintage stuff, not the new stuff. But anyway,
I really like the pre-war, the stuff before 1950. I think like the 1933 Gaudy baseball cards with the Babe Ruth. The 4 Babe Ruth cards, number 53 being the yellow background, just an iconic, beautiful card. That excites me. What excites me is really I just love being able to curate the history of the hobby. It's not just hobby, it's the history of printing. It's the history of ink on cardboard. I love that. You know, my Bill Russell rookie card for basketball. I love that card. I have a Jim Brown rookie, my Joe Namath rookie. I love these cards. I have a Fran Tarkenton rookie. It's just so cool. What a cool looking card.
I want one of those.
Yeah. So, you know, if you're Hall of Famers, Mount Rushmore type players are, you know, that excites me, because in 50 years, we're not going to remember a lot of these players. No, the people on the earth at that time, the collectors won't remember. And I don't know how much they're going to care about secondary, third level Hall of Famers, but you'll always know the world will never forget about Babe Ruth and Mickey Mantle, and maybe not even Ken Griffey Jr. and Derek Jeter. Mike Trout is still forgettable. I do believe he's the guy that could be forgettable. You got to win championships to have a 100-year legic sort of thing. And
agree.
He hasn't yet. So, in basketball, it's Bill Russell, it's Kareem, it's Wilt Chamberlain. Those are the guys that excite me. Kind of funny story. And I forget what year it was that Magic Johnson announced that he had the HIV virus.
I think it was 92.
92.
Yeah.
So the day that happened, I called my stepdad, who was on his way home from work, and I said, "Hey, there's a Magic Johnson Larry Bird rookie card for sale at one of the card shops downtown. Go buy it right now, please." And he did. He stopped and bought. So like the day that it was announced, I kind of had, again, I'm sure a lot of people had this foresight, but I was like, we got to get that card before somebody else does, because I believe if he passes away, it's going to go up in value. And thankfully he didn't. Magic's a great guy and all that. But again, I'm just saying, like, that was a card that I bought early on because I wanted it. And those guys, I watched those guys play. It's one thing to collect cards of players that you never saw play, that you can't even see much footage on because they're before, say, the 60s. Yeah. And to me, that's when you're collecting the history of the game, the pioneers. And I think that's I love that stuff. But I do understand how much more exciting it is to buy cards of players that play today, especially on your own team or on your fantasy team. Like that's where we're seeing a lot of interest. And I fully support it. And I do it too. I do collect modern day players. I have lots, but I don't necessarily consider them to be the investments until they become worthy, and then I'm like, okay, in hockey, Sidney Crosby, Alexander Ovechkin, these guys are they're all-time greats. They're Hall of Famers. They're worthy of investment. So I will pick them up once I get there. And then I will take a few flyers. Like I did pick up a Luka rookie in 2019. I thought I picked up a Pascal Siakam. I picked up a Kawhi Leonard PSA 10 Prism at that same show for $290.
Oh, wow.
I mean, again, a lot of people did. I'm nothing special for doing that, but I was out buying cards every year for many years, and just some years are better than others, I guess. So again, it just comes back to, if you're going to really invest in a current player, I think you got to diversify a little bit too. And then you asked earlier, Dustin, about unopened product, which is really interesting. And I think the ship might be sailing on that, because on Sports Card Investor's most recent video, he talks about, his whole episode is about unopened wax. I
saw it too. And you know what? I thought about it. I'm like, maybe I should really look into that more. And then I'm like, you know what though? That's probably what everyone else is thinking as well. that watched it,
Yeah. Well, so to me, I mean, Jeff Wilson makes a very good point that, this is your opportunity to buy the mutual fund of all the rookies in that year, which is great if you're buying the right year, because not all years are equal. As we all know, the card companies know that better than anybody. Not all years are equal. But Jeff says he loves 2012 and 2018, I believe he pointed out in the video. We both probably watched it yesterday, the day before. Yeah. And I think it's a good thing. And the other thing he said, which again, this is so obvious, but until you hear someone say it, you don't necessarily think it. It's got this inverse relationship to the population of the actual cards. The more unopened product that gets opened, the higher the pop goes of the rookies inside. Yeah. So, and the more that gets opened, the less unopened there is out there. So it becomes more and more valuable. And I like unopened product. I don't collect unopened boxes or cases. I just, to me, I'd rather buy the car. I'd rather buy a vintage player that I know is a good investment versus take that gamble on a current product that you don't know what's going to happen with it. That's just me though. I'm not like saying don't do it. I think there is some merit to it. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, and plus, like, having a case of unopened product, that to me, that's not fun to display. I don't know, an unopened box of something, that's nice because you actually have graphics and pictures and information on it. That is actually more of a showpiece. But yeah, that's a video worth watching, I would say, that Jeff did. And because it was on Jeff's channel, and I can tell you from having him on my show, I mean, my viewership when he was on was like 20 times any other show I've had, because he has a big audience and they followed him. Yeah. So the ship may sail on that. But but if more people do that, then the prices of singles are going to go up because there won't be as many of those either. So that whole phenomenon can easily reverse.
Yeah, one thing that I did learn, I guess, and there's going to be pitfalls with everything, but I opened a rack pack of 1982 Topps football on my channel, and that was really fun. And that was not something I bought for, investment. I was joking around like, hey, I'm going to pull 10 LT rookie cards out of this thing, and not that my expectation was that. It was more of like, man, this is cool opening a pack that's this old. But the one thing I did notice, just not having a lot of experience buying vintage stuff. Now, if it's modern and it's sealed, then maybe that's a whole different ball game. But this is a rack pack that's 40 years old almost, and the cards can slide around in it. And you could just tell right out of the gate that the cards were not in good condition, in that pack. So I think that, you have to just be careful, especially because a lot of people are buying online now. It's not as if you're going and buying the stuff in person. You can look at it. My only concern, or not necessarily concern, but just watch out for buying online. If it is a package where the cards can move around a lot, then that, the condition of those cards after 40 years, don't expect them to be in amazing shape. If you're buying them to hold and then flip that, those packs or whatever. And of course, it's going to depend, like you said, Jeremy, on the year. What's the rookie class? What sport is it? There's all sorts of different things. I bought a couple that I have unopened just because I thought it would be. It's more of the history piece. I'm not gonna flip that unless, I don't know, 20 years, 30 years, the thing is, $10,000 for the rack pack. I'll sell it, I guess. But I mean, I bought it just because I thought it would be kind of cool, kind of like the treasure that you bury. That's like, yeah, we're gonna bury it. What's that called? Where you put a box in the ground that's got all the stuff from today,
like a time capsule sort of thing.
Like a time capsule, yeah. Because one of them is these were rack packs that were 3 rack packs for 99 cents at the grocery store in 1982.
Right.
So it's got that sticker on it. And I'm like, that's going to be really cool to look at down the road. Way down the road. So it was just more of a buy and hold type thing, kind of like it'll be an antique, down the road.
Yeah. I in around 2000, that was back around 2008, 2009, I started putting together a run of an unopened pack of every year that O-Pee-Chee made hockey cards, which started in 1968 and went basically till 89. I didn't need to go after 89. And I put together I have to this day a single unopened pack from 1970 all the way to 1989. And there's, a couple of years where series 1, 2, 3 in the early days. And I bought most of these from Steve Hart from Baseball Card, BBC, whatever, I forget what it stands for, Baseball Card Exchange. And he's the guy that verifies unopened product for various, he's the guy that actually assesses whether or not a pack is tampered whenever you send something to a pack to PSA to get graded. So back in like the late 2000s, I bought an 1979 Gretzky pack for $300. Great deal. I bought a Jordan, a 86 Fleer pack. I bought a 1980 Topps basketball pack, and so I have the whole O-Pee-Chee hockey run, and then 3 or 4 other non-hockey packs. And the beautiful thing about them to me is that these packs themselves are art. To me, that is actual art because someone designed that packaging. When we talk about cards as art, I don't disagree with that, but it's a photo with a border usually, which and other effects, especially 90s inserts, or have all the bells and whistles, of course. But I think packs are super cool in terms of their that they're art, they're 3D. And the other thing is that I opened a lot of those. So if you're like, maybe, I don't know what the age is you need to be. If you're 30 or older, you probably opened wax packs, not foil packs, not plastic packs, not tins and boxes and all these different formats they come in, but you actually opened wax packs with wax paper with gum inside, like I did as a kid for so many years. Yeah. That's very nostalgic for me to go back and get all those unopened packs. And I think they're awesome. And they've gone up in value big time as well since I acquired them. And so anyway, we talk about unopened product. I do have unopened product. And people always say to me, whether they're friends like that aren't in the hobby or people that are, they say, you must be dying to open them. It's like, I have zero dying to open them in me. I want them in their original unopened format. That's what in that state. That's what I want. So no, I have no interest, no desire to open them. I say maybe on my deathbed, I'll open them up and see what's inside.
I love it. Flipping Steve has a great channel as well, guys. Check him out. He says that he has a vintage, or he went into a vintage toy shop today and they were selling 89 Pro Set football packs. How many did you buy, Steve? Did you pull any Oklahoma State Barry Sanders rookie cards out of there? Man, that is really awesome. Actually, I wonder, I should go on eBay and actually see if I can get some 89 Pro Set packs, just because I'm sure that they can't be that expensive. I bought a box of 91 Skybox basketball because that was something I used to get, and it was like $25 for 36 packs. It was probably less today than it was back then, so
probably back then the big card, besides the Barry Sanders, the big card in that product was the Rahib Ishmael card, the Rocket Ishmael, who played in the Canadian Football League
for Syracuse. Rocket Ishmael.
Yeah, I don't remember what college he played for, but yeah.
Yeah, he was awesome. And then Deion Sanders has a great card in his Florida State uniform in that set as well. Ziggy says, Jeremy, you inspire me. I'm going to try to model your suggestions. Big fan of Ziggy's channel too. Ziggy puts out a sports card daily show where he kind of covers content throughout the day, throws in his own thoughts as well. Excellent show that he puts on. He has his own YouTube channel. Check him out if you have not already.
Thanks, Ziggy. Appreciate that.
Absolutely. Steve is big into vintage soccer right now, and on his channel, he's talking about it a lot, picking up stickers. Have you gotten into the Maradonas and the Pelés and stuff? Is that part of your repertoire, Jeremy, or not quite yet?
Missed the boat on those, but I did look into them recently just to get an understanding of what the key card is. I'd love to own them. I remember, Pelé. I've known about Pelé for my whole life, it feels like. So Pelé, I'd love to have these guys' cards, but I don't necessarily want them in a PSA 3 or 4 condition. I just would rather almost not have one, put that money into something different. So I'd love to get them in a 7 or an 8, but I think the ship has sailed for me in terms of, being able to put that kind of money out for those cards. But yeah, I see the interest. I think what we're, part of this boom in 2020, it's spreading to some of the other sports, my bread and butter is hockey, which is like the 5th most popular sport in cards now behind soccer, which eBay announced at the industry summit last weekend. So, tennis cards, wrestling cards, all those things. I'd love to have the right, all the key people's rookie cards. Yeah, for sure. But no, not in my repertoire yet.
Not yet. Okay. Let's see what other comments we have. Guys, throw out any questions that you might have. And I'm sorry if I know I missed some questions earlier. I'm going to try to scroll back through and just see if there's a good one that we can answer. But go ahead and throw out any questions you have now. We're going to move kind of more to a Q&A type part of the show. There was something I was about to ask you and I just lost it. Dang it. Are you guys starting to get more, or actually did card shows slow down for you all in Canada where you are? Are you still humming along, or has it come back at all? What's the
nothing at all.
Okay.
So, which is so we have the Toronto Expo, which is the second biggest show in the world beside, card show behind the National. And it's twice a year. And I've been a loyal vendor and attendee, attending it since probably 2000, set up since 2005. I love it. It's a great show. But that hasn't happened. It's supposed to be in middle of November. It's twice a year, beginning of May, middle of November, not happening. Yeah. The local shows, as far as I know, not happening. The other sort of bigger show, there's 2 other bigger shows in Canada. One's in Edmonton, usually every April, and there's another one in Vancouver right around every November. And those 2 aren't happening either. But what the guy from Toronto, so the guy who owns the Toronto show, his name is Steve Menzies. He's just partnered up with the guy who owns the Chicago Spectacular, or the Sports Spectacular, which used to be known as the Sun Times show, a very big, well-known show. And the owners of these 2 shows just partnered up to put together the virtual expo, which will be November 21st and 22nd of coming up in less than a month. And I had them both on my channel just a couple nights ago talking about the upcoming virtual expo, which, not to be confused with the virtual con that Jeff Wilson from Sports Card Investor is putting on at some point in December, which is more of a conference, I believe, than like a traditional card show. Whereas the virtual expo, again, will be awesome. And if anyone wants to, I really recommend you guys check that out. This will be the second time that Steve has done it, but this time he's partnered with a guy from Chicago. So it's going to be more of a international type of flavor show. And do you mind if I put the website out there or just say it, Dustin, where to go to get that show?
Not at all. Go ahead. Yeah.
So the website is Sportcard Expo, sportcardexpo.com. That's where you can find information on the virtual show. Don't quote me, but I believe it'll be free to enter. And it's going to be great. There's some appearances of some athletes. And it's on the same platform that the Beckett Industry Summit was just held on last weekend. So it's a great platform. It's meant for this sort of thing. I've used it twice now because I attended the first virtual expo. I attended the Beckett Summit, and it's an awesome platform. You can really feel like you're at a card show to the extent you can without being there. You know, it's better than nothing. And so check it out, guys, because it was awesome. I had a great show as a vendor, and I just had a great 2 days kind of streaming the whole time. And, you know, people can come in your booth and sit on screen with you and talk. People can watch and not come on screen. And it's actually pretty easy to show your cards. You can link to your cards and people can see what's for sale. And so check it out if you're not yet planning to.
Yeah, virtual conferences have come a long way over the last 5 years. There's so many good platforms for that. I was researching it. And there's a lot of good platforms out there to get them set up and to put them on. It's pretty awesome. I'm sure it's only going to get better. All right, we have a question from Hockey 99. Being based in Calgary, do you own any Bret Hart rookie cards?
Great question. I saw him at the airport before COVID, actually. But no, I don't own any Bret Hart rookie cards. I'm not a wrestling fan. I mean, the last time I watched wrestling was like Roddy Piper and Hulk Hogan's early days, like the mid 80s type of thing. So I'd love to have a Hulk Hogan rookie card, maybe an Andre the Giant. Those are guys that I watched when I was a little kid. I haven't watched wrestling since then. So no, I don't have a Bret Hart rookie card. He doesn't even interest me, to be honest.
I know that this does interest you. Grab those Tony Hawk Sports Illustrated for Kids cards. Every time I see a sale, it is higher than the previous.
Do not grab those Tony Hawk SI for Kids cards because I'm the one pumping them up.
It's really funny because Steve is separately, and I know that I'm probably blowing Jeremy's cover here, but
cover blown. But you know what? I gave time because we talked about this a month ago. So you've had at least a month to get in on the Tony Hawk Sports Illustrated for Kids cards, but Steve is also in on these as well. So I think that's funny. You guys are both big on these. I remember the Sports Illustrated for Kids magazines. I got them in the mail, and those cards were right there in the center. You know, I mean, I probably had a Tony Hawk at one point, but it's like everything. You know, I just want to say to Flipping Steve, did you buy that PSA 8 that just ended last week? Because I tried to snipe, but I was out sniped. But I got the one before it. I got the PSA 9 before it. I've got that. I mean, I'll come out with it now, I guess. Why not? I mean, I told a few people privately, including yourself, Dustin, like a month ago. But I think that card is just primed. And I mean, it's like I don't want to be I don't hype many things, you know, but. And that card, I've been trying to buy that card since like July, as many copies as I could, because I think that card, just like Pokemon, has exploded for that age group. You know, skateboarding is like something that people are passionate about. They love it, and I see Tony Hawk is the GOAT. It's unquestionable, and he's gone over, just like Pokemon has video games. Tony Hawk does too. I know one's live sport, one's make believe. I get that, but I still see many parallels. It was DJ Quicksilva. Well, I'm sorry. We were both out sniped, Flipping Steve, to DJ Quicksilva. I'm sorry for pumping up the price, but I wanted it. And I think that the Tony Hawk SI for Kids card has flown under the radar. Maybe it won't anymore. And I mean, don't accuse me of hyping it because I've bought as many as I can without talking about it. And now, but I mean, I'll also I'll talk about it because I genuinely believe it's a good investment. And I was never a skateboarder. Like, you know, I had a skateboard before they were actually like, you know, when they were just those long banana board type things. I just believe that that's a great holding. And I'm sure obviously others in the room do too. Sean White, I saw, I'd love to get a Shaun White card too. I remember, yeah, but no, I think Tony Hawk is the best of the, like, I don't know what you call it, X game type of sports to invest in. It's not quite, tennis is different, boxing is different, UFC is different. I do believe that card is going to go up in value. And now that we're talking about it, got to think it will even more, maybe.
Any sort of Halloween show do you have anything planned? Are you doing a costume party Halloween show? I've thought about that too, doing some sort of Halloween themed show, but I don't have anything in place yet.
I do. Ziggy might have given me a layup there. I do have so I'm having a Pokemon themed show. I'm not a Pokemon guy, but I've become interested in it because I'm a cardboard collector, and so like I got a Queen Elizabeth card, just to let you guys of the 1952 Tops look and see. I've got the Queen Elizabeth. I'm still pining for the Billy the Kid and a PSA 8. How awesome is it? If you guys don't want to see a cool card, go to eBay and Google go to eBay and search for 1952 Tops look, see, like LOOK and then SEE Billy the Kid. It's a yellow background card. What a wicked card. I want to get one of those. So anyway, my point is that, I've recently become interested in Pokemon because of what's going on in the market.
Yeah.
And I did, back in July, I bought 3 PSA 9 Charizards, the unlimiteds, for like $800 each. They're now doing $5,500 a piece. So again, I'm not taking any credit for it. Anybody could have done it. A lot of people did. I just got in early enough. And so I've become interested in Pokemon. I've got about 13 or 14 cards, all en route. And so I've got a couple of Pokemon experts lined up to join me on Halloween. I've actually got 3 of them lined up. My buddy Karn Rai, who is a big Pokemon guy. He's also from the Big 3. Some of you might have seen him on YouTube and Instagram. And then Yam and I are in discussions right now for Yam to join me for like the second half of the episode. He's got his own kind of Halloween activities that night, but if he can get away, he's going to come on. And then another buddy of mine, Ralph, is I'm going to get him to come on the After Hours program and just talk about Pokemon. But I'm no expert, so I'm bringing on experts. And hopefully the cards I have incoming will be here so I can show them. Yeah,
so you said it. I mean, you just kind of got into Pokemon. You're kind of interested in everything cardboard that that's going on in the hobby. Are you buying cards are you going off of, you have kind of guys and gals kind of helping you out with that stuff and kind of giving you tips and tricks about the sets, or are you more just kind of acting more on instinct and looking at eBay sales, making comps and doing it on your own?
My first the first Pokemon card I ever bought was that night. I bought 3 of those PSA 9s off of PWCC auction because they have multiples. I bought 3 of them without knowing anything about it, really. Just knowing that Charizard was the guy, knowing that the first edition shadow lists were out of reach, and when something goes out of reach, people look for the next best thing. I figured that's going to be the next best thing, and I turned out to be right, as evidenced by what the market's done since then. But then I reached out to my buddy Ralph and I said, hey, you educate me. We actually set like a FaceTime meeting, and we sat for like 2 hours, and he talked to me about it. And I said, I want to know the top 3 cards in every release that's important. And we went through it for like an hour, and like I wrote them all down. I wrote them all down here. Like these are my Pokemon notes. These are the cards of interest. And I've been going off of it. Now I haven't been buying, because now I'm looking at the cards. And if there's like the dark Pokemon, the dark Charizard, I should say, I don't like the looks of it. I don't care what it's worth. I'm not buying one. I'm only buying cards I like the looks of, because it's so foreign to me that I have to like these things in order to want to buy them. And I figure if I like them, some other people will too. And there could be some long-term value in them. So that's how I'm approaching it. But yes, I called out to 2 experts. My experts, if I can call them that, who I'm planning again to have on the show, on Halloween night.
And speaking of the show too, so like I said earlier, you have, for those that haven't seen Jeremy's show, if you're new to Jeremy, if tonight's first time you've seen him, he runs a YouTube channel, Sportscards Live, and he has 60 plus shows. They're all interviews, but he has the most unbelievable guest list on that. I mean, he has literally the kind of the who's who in the hobby on his channel. So, if you're kind of getting into the hobby, if you are getting back in, and you want some sort of, if you're really big into the interviews, because a lot of people like that interview setup, go back and take a look at his channel, because he's got all sorts of different people that have come on that really give a lot of good insights into what's going on, and you can just learn a ton outside of what Jeremy has to offer as well. But are there certain guests that you kind of out there in the world, that you want to have on your show, or that you have kind of targets, certain people that, man, in the next year, next 6 months, I'd really like to have so and so. And you don't necessarily have to say names, but maybe just like, CEO of whatever company or whatever. Are there certain people that you have your, eyes on or targeting for that?
Yeah, man, there are. Well, when I first started brainstorming my channel, or actually right in front of me here on my wall, I've got a bunch of Post-its on the wall with all that's on them in big Sharpie is the name of the person, my target list. And it's become a lot smaller than it once was. And actually, I like here, this one's been on my wall for months. It's been on my wall since April. I take it down. He's been on the show, right? So yes, I have my target list on my wall, and there's still, I don't know, maybe 15 names on there of people that I'd like to get on. But there are some key guys. Like Adam Martin of Dave and Adams. He's a guy that I think would be really interesting because he has one of the most well-known shops in the hobby, and he is a guy that he's my customer. He buys cards from me at the expo every time. At the expo, he's there out buying cards for whatever products they're doing. So I'd like to get him on. I'd like to get either Joe Orlando or Steve Sloan on the show, but I have been in discussion with somebody else at PSA to come on. I'm just tomorrow. I'm having a call with the owner of Blowout to figure out when he's coming on. Tom Fish. So So I got him now. He's gonna be on the show. I'd love to get Nat Turner on the show. I mean, someone who can collect the way he does would be interesting. I'd love to get Adam Lefko on the show just because he's he's just got such a personality, he's so
charismatic. Yeah.
And then the guy I'd really love to get now would be Gary V, because of just how, he has a huge audience. He's such an influencer, and I'm a believer that Gary loves the hobby. And I feel like if he were to come on my show, I'd be able to show that. I think he shows that side of him himself, but I think some people are skeptical. I think I could really get that out of him and really show the kid in him and how much he loves the hobby. And he's not a pump and dumper. Maybe I'm wrong, but I want to find out for myself. So that's kind of you did warn me about this question. So that's what I came up with. And a lot of those people are on my wall already. So yeah,
it's just a matter of time. It'll happen.
It's like some of the people that were on my wall originally, I didn't think I'd get. And those were some of the ones that were easier to get. But, like Steve Grad, who's been on like almost 200 episodes of Pawn Stars. He was one of my early guests, but he's a personal friend of mine. He's the lead authenticator for Beckett Authentication Services. He's a friend. So it was, I call him up. He's like, anytime, man, anytime. That was cool to get him on. I've had Brian Gray on a few times, who owns Leaf. I've had like 3 different people on from Upper Deck. I've had Panini. I've got more Panini guys coming on the show now. I got 2 more of them lined up to come on. Dr. James Beckett was my guest on episode number 30. That was a big deal for me. I think he's the most iconic name in the whole hobby besides the players on the cards.
Yes.
Tim Getch was a great one, of course. I really enjoyed that episode. Ken Golden came on my show 3 days before he sold that Mike Trout card. Ken Golden has an insight into the hobby that nobody else does, because he's dealing with the biggest buyers out there. So it was really cool to get him on as well.
I thought this was a good question. And I'm not going to say the name right. I apologize. Is it Guy Lai? I'm going to mess it up. Sorry, man. Can you get some sports athletes who collect sports cards on the show? Any interest in having athletes or ex-athlete, people, guys that are done playing, any interest on that end of it?
So people sometimes ask me questions like, oh, you should get this guy from this area of the collecting world or whatever. And, with the exception of Pokemon, I do say my show is called Sports Cards Live. It's not called game worn jerseys live or anything like that, you know? So if I'm bringing on an athlete, I want to talk about cards with them. I'm not interested in hearing about their history, their past, or some of their anecdotes or who they liked watching when they were young. So many other people do that. I really want to focus on cards because that's what I love. And so, you know, there are some players that are in the hobby. I have one lined up actually. So, I mean, you guys won't have heard of him, but there's a goalie who played for the Pittsburgh Penguins, the Detroit Red Wings, the Winnipeg Jets, named Joe Daly. He played in the 60s and the 70s, and he owns a card shop in Winnipeg, Canada. He's coming on my show in December with his son. They're one of my first LCSs. So
nice.
He's not someone you want. There's some other play, Marcel Dion, who's a Hall of Famer. He's in the hobby. He sets up at the Expo, and he's like the third highest scorer of all time in the NHL. George Larocque's another guy that works in or has a shop in Montreal. But anyway, I mean, the question that Guy is asking, I mean, maybe there's a collector in Canada. His name is Sean Chalk. He's known as like the Gretzky of Gretzky collectors. And so I had him on an episode. I thought it would be really cool if you could help me get Wayne Gretzky on my show for episode number 99, because that's Gretzky's number, of course. And yeah. But it's a great question. Not my top targets. I'm not pushing it. I do have a scout coming on the show in a couple of weeks for the Florida Panthers, professional scout. He's been doing it for about 6 years. He happens to be my first cousin. So again, easy to get the guy, right? Easy to just.
I remember. Yeah, I remember you mentioning him. Okay, cool. Yeah, that's an interesting insight too.
Oh, yeah. So I'm just seeing in the comments, the guy that owns Spawn. Yeah.
Can you get Todd McFarlane on?
Todd McFarlane. I mean, yeah, maybe I don't know how I'd get a hold of the guy, but
that would be cool.
That would be cool for sure.
I'll work on Todd McFarlane too. Maybe we can do kind of a joint call or something. You know, that would be awesome.
Sure. Yeah. Interesting question. Yeah, that'd be fun.
All right, guys, I think that we're going to wrap up here. We're coming up to about 90 minutes. Any last second questions, go ahead and throw them in now. Otherwise, we'll probably look to wrap up. Thank you again, everybody, for coming on. I don't typically do live, so I kind of do wing it. And, you know, I hope that we provided some good conversation, some good value for you tonight. Let me see if we've got any more coming through here. Or if I missed any, for that matter.
Yeah, I'm kind of looking at them too, just on the other screen here. But I mean, well, we have a few minutes. Dustin, thank you for inviting me on. You've been on my show. I always appreciate the invitation the other way. You've been on my show twice now, actually. The last time, kind of last minute. I appreciated that. Yeah, you're regular. Yeah. But no, thanks for having me on. I always appreciate when a guest comes on my show, they promote that they're coming on my show on their channel, on their social platforms, whatever, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, all that. I'm really so appreciative that people do that, because it brings more viewers to my show, and hopefully they subscribe and I can see those numbers go up. That's, but I'm looking for quality subscribers. I'm looking for I want that number to get big. Who doesn't? I'm not going to pretend I don't want that number to get big. I do. But I want my subscribers to, to get something out of the episodes, and to learn something, and to meet people in the hobby that you couldn't meet otherwise. I say to all my guests, is like, I'm not here to put you on the spot. We're not here to be attacked. This isn't a negative show. It's about the audience meeting and learning about the people that are maybe some of the people that are behind the scenes in the hobby, or that are, in the industry. I want that to happen. So I just want to say thanks for having me on, for exposing me to your audience. And if people in your audience are willing to subscribe to my channel and check out some of my episodes are long. They're all like 2 hours basically. So, you might want to fast forward through some, or, pick the ones that you are interested in. But, if you're going to check it out, I greatly appreciate it. If you're going to subscribe, I greatly appreciate that. And
yeah, the great thing about Jeremy's channel is, look, whether this is your first day in the hobby, or you've been in it for a couple of years, you're getting back into it, there's something for everyone on his channel. And that's what's fantastic about it. I'm not just saying that he has the best interview show on the internet for sports cards. He really does. It's not a joke. So, check out his channel at Sports Cards Live, invite all your friends. And like I said, they are longer. They're longer. They're 2 hours long, but you can watch them in pieces. And he has a library of 60 plus episodes on that channel. you could just spend the next 2 months going through and watching that, and you would be up to speed on pretty much everything that's that's going on in the hobby and what you need to know to actually buy and sell cards, invest in cards, etc. So yeah, thank you very much, Jeremy, for coming on. And guys, I think we're going to wrap up, but we will have him on again next time. I want to have consistent people on the channel, and I'll come back to Jeremy, maybe in another month or two, and see if he'll come back on again.
Can I address a question on the
absolutely
in the thing there? So I see the question about any new kids on the vlog cards. I don't have any of those, but should I? Trevor LeConte says, should I buy 0506 hockey box and keep long term? If you're, just like Jeff Wilson is investing in 2012 Prism and 2012 and 2018, not just Prism, but all different brands. If you're going to do it in hockey, 0506 is a place to do it, 100%. And so is 15-16. Those are the 2 years I would recommend for hockey. I don't collect this stuff, but I do have a box of 0506 Series 1 up there on my shelf, which I kind of acquired in a funky sort of deal. So I do think so. And then I see the do you collect cards from classic movies like The Sandlot? I don't, but I've always wondered, because I've always been a card collector. I've always wondered, how could you now go about collecting actors and actresses and musicians and all that? And, Leaf does Pop Century. There's those are options. It's the autograph world. Anyway, just sort of some random thoughts.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of stuff too on what's popped up lately. Signatures of ex-presidents and things, autos of historical people, I guess, historical people in general. And I thought that was really kind of interesting. It's like that actually might have some legs. I mean, for certain items, certain artifacts, that stuff was interesting to me too. Maybe I'll do a separate show, on that stuff. But all right, guys, I think that we are going to wrap it up. So thank you again, Jeremy. Like I said, I'm going to have Jeremy back on if he'll come back on, and check out his channel. I know I've said it a few times now, but Sportscards Live. You won't be sad that you checked it out. Trust me. This guy is a pro.
Thanks so much, man. I really appreciate that.
All right, guys. Have a good night, and we will talk to you again later. Thanks again.
Bye, everybody.